everyone, welcome to Taiwan on Fishing. Today I'm going to be talking about why your pound test line doesn't matter. It may seem a little extreme, and that doesn't mean for you to go use 50-pound braid on every application, but what I'm talking about is when you're walking through a fishing store and looking for a 10-pound test line, what are you really comparing? Now, a big thing, and I'm going to say the number one priority, is going to be line diameter compared to pound test. Now, honestly, pound test ratings don't matter altogether. So if you take a look here at two comparable fluorocarbon leader lines, I've got J Fluoro in 6-pound and 8-pound Seaguar Blue Label. So 6-pound J Fluoro is 0.218 millimeters, whereas Seaguar Blue Label is going to be 0.215 millimeters. Now this 6-pound J Fluoro is actually thicker than this 8-pound Blue Label. So it's exactly what I'm talking about. I remember back when I first started fishing tournaments, it's like I'm only going to be using 8-pound Blue Label or Blue Label line for tournaments because that's a premium fluorocarbon. When in practice I was using a bunch of other lines. Come tournament day, Blue Label I was breaking off all the time, just wasn't used to the line. Depending on the application, I was breaking off on rocks and all that sort of thing. And it's because it's actually a significantly thinner line, and it probably breaks closer to 8-pound test than most other lines that are comparable to it. Now, in your experiences, if you've had a line that you thought was great and then you switched and thought, wow, like I've never broken off this much, it's probably because the line you're using is thicker than the new line you've just tried out. So that comes down to true breaking strength versus what the breaking strength on the label says. This isn't just with fluorocarbon leaders or monofilament. This actually is across all different types of line. I can guarantee you if you picked out every single brand's 10-pound test, almost all of them will have a different diameter. Whether that's fluorocarbon leaders, monofilament, copolymers, or braid. Now braid by nature is significantly thinner than most other lines. So again, even 10-pound braid is going to be equivalent to like a 2-pound or 1-pound monofilament. So another example would be that 10-pound Trilene XL is going to be 0.27 millimeters, and Trilene XT in 10-pound is going to be 0.35 millimeters. Now you would think that like XL is their extra light, or it's one of the most common sold lines, whereas XT is their extra tough. So XL is going to cast nicer, it's going to be a little bit more user-friendly, whereas XT is going to be significantly more abrasion resistant, and it's actually probably going to break at a higher pound test rating than what 10-pound packaging says. And that's primarily because of the line diameter. Now with higher line diameter, you're also going to get a couple other unwanted features such as higher memory and probably more stretch. And it's going to be just a little bit stiffer of a line. And that being said, what I consider when I'm looking to buy a new fishing line are going to be the diameter, stretch, memory, durability, and price. And it all depends on what the application is. An example of one of the questions we used to get all the time is spooling float fishing reels. Almost every single float fisherman or center pin user for steelhead or salmon is going to have a different opinion online. So Suffolk Siege is probably what we spooled the most of in an 8-pound or 10-pound. So typically 8-pound Suffolk Siege would do great for Ontario steelhead, especially if you are fairly new to it and you're replacing your line fairly often, but it is a thick 8-pound. So if you compare that to some other lines such as Gamma, Maxima, or Sunline Signal V, for example, they're going to have vastly different diameters and vastly different properties relative to their memory and stretch and stiffness. So for example, Suffolk Siege in 10-pound is going to be 0.305 millimeters compared to a Sunline Signal V, where some guys love it or hate it. I almost would never recommend an 8-pound Sunline compared to an 8-pound Suffolk Siege, because 8-pound Sunline is just way too thin. You're really probably fishing like a 4 or 6-pound Suffolks in relativity. The difference in diameter of Suffolk Siege at 10-pound of 0.305 millimeters compared to Siglon V at 0.205 millimeters is a whole tenth of a millimeter. It may not sound like much, but realistically, it's probably 2 line sizes of a difference. Another big example in float fishing or steelheading, even fly fishing for that matter, is 6-pound Drennan fluorocarbon leader is actually equivalent to 10-pound CR Blue Label. So again, that's probably why you will notice differences in how your performance is with different leaders. With all that being said, the number one thing I would say is to figure out what properties you like about the line you're using, and then use that to determine what line you're going to try next, or just stick with what you like. Hope this information helps you. Time and on, and good luck fishing.